Start. Welcome to the Audit Committee on a lovely sunny day. The meeting is being held under the Local Authorities Coronavirus Meetings Wales Regulations 2020. And like other meetings, I'd like to manage expectations from the outset and highlight that there may be some glitches in this meeting. However, please be reassured that we will learn from them and keep striving towards a seamless process. I'm also conscious that a number of the participants may have issues with bandwidth and would suggest that they turn off the video should that become an issue. The meeting, as you know, is being broadcast live so that members of the public and others may view it. Can you please ensure that you all mute your mics and remember to unmute them when you're called to speak? I'm minded that one of our councillors, Councillor Peter Jones, has not got access to the electronic raise hand, so I'll be minded to keep an eye for his hand being raised on the video screen. So if we can go through for attendance purposes, I'm Chair Paula on, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I just call out members' names then. Councillor Cyril Anderson, and if you could just say present or here, please.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Black.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor David Helliwell.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Terry Hennigan.
Present.
Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver James. Councillor Oliver James. Now Councillor Peter Jones.
Present.
Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. Councillor Erica Kirshner. Councillor Kirshner. Present. Councillor Mike Lewis. Councillor Lewis.
Mike is there.
Yeah, I am here. I just crashed out and I came back in.
No problem, thank you. Councillor Sam Pritchard.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Leslie Bolton.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Mike White.
Present.
I believe we've got a number of officers present as well, so if I can ask Kate to go through the officer names as well, please.
Okay, officers. Peter Field.
Here.
Thank you. Simon Cockings.
Present.
Richard Rowlands.
Present.
Ben Smith.
Present.
Thank you. Adam Hill.
Present.
I don't know whether Michelle Davis. Possibly joining later. And in the office here we have Debbie Smith. Present as well.
Okay, thank you very much all. If we can move to the agenda then, please. If you could take any apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies received.
Thank you. Could I have any disclosures of personal interest, please? No disclosures? Thank you. Okay, if we can turn to the minutes of the meeting of the 30th of June, agenda item 3. If we can take them page by page for accuracy, please. So it's page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9. If everyone's happy, are we happy to approve those minutes? Could we have?
Yes.
I'll move you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The next item is an update on the internal audit of social care contracts. And I believe, Peter, you were going to address this paper?
Yeah, I'm happy to take you through that.
Okay, then, if you could go ahead. If you can assume that we've read the paper,
Sure.
And just draw out any key elements that you wish the committee members to be aware of.
Yeah, there you are. So section 1 of the report simply summarises the background explains that the audit was carried out in 2017 and that there were 94 contracts identified as non-compliant with corporate CPRs and public contracts regulations. Section 2 explains that by May 2018, some progress had been made and that 16 contracts had ended, and a monitoring arrangement to ensure compliance had been introduced via the People Directorate Commissioning Group. Then at 3.1, it explains that by December, that number of non-compliant contracts had reduced from 94 to 30, but waivers had been created so that corporate CPRs were complied with. And then section 4 simply explains that there are still some non-compliant contracts at April 2019. So at that time, there are approximately 21 or so. And then the June update at section 5 says that there are currently no non-compliant contracts, but I do need to be clear about what that means. So what I'm saying here is that there are waivers in place for a small number of contracts to enable these arrangements to be compliant with corporate CPRs. But some of these contracts are still not technically compliant with public contract regulations, and ultimately they do need to be re-procured via a competitive tender exercise. So I am only talking about a small number, approximately 10 in total, and they include some third sector contracts, a couple of domiciliary care contracts, and so further work will be needed over the next 6 to 12 months to decide whether or not those services need to be formally recommissioned. And this is work that would have progressed but for COVID-19 and which will need to resume as soon as a return to business as usual is possible. And so in summary, I suppose what I'm saying is that all contractual arrangements should be compliant with CPRs. A small number, very small number, have contract waivers in situ, and that the recommissioning work will resume, and where appropriate, contracts will be retendered over the next 12 months, and that a follow-up audit will be carried out in Audit to sample compliance. So in a nutshell, that's it really. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. Are there any questions, please, from any members? If you could put your hands up so I could see. No questions? Can I just congratulate you on the progress you've made, although it's taken a little time. You've obviously done a tremendous amount of work to get to the point that you have. With regards to the recommissioning, particularly for those 10 that need to be retendered, if some focus can be given on that to make sure that we're receiving value for money whilst those contracts are out of compliance. And I'm pleased to hear that, Simon, you'll be doing a follow-up in the autumn of this year just to check and test that out. If there are no further questions, I think the paper is just for noting. So we're happy to accept that paper. Do we need to take a vote on that? Can I ask you, do we need to take a vote on accepting that paper?
No.
No. Okay, then I'm being told that we don't have to take a vote. So if we can just note that paper then. And thank you again, Peter, for summarising that so well.
Thank you, Chair. Pleasure. Presumably you don't need me to remain for the remainder of the...
No, you're happy to sign out if that's convenient for you.
Thank you. Thanks again.
If we move on then to agenda item 5, which is over to Simon, and that's the internal audit plan and the monitoring report for April to June 2020. Simon, if I can ask you to do a similar sort of thing, just summarise, assuming we've read the paper.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hope everybody as well. So yes, this is just the standard monitoring report for the section for Q1 2021, covering the period from April to June. Bearing in mind that this is the period, really the first period where we've been exposed to the challenges of COVID-19 as an organisation and as a department. So just to bear that in mind as a part of the background really for this report. So if you go to section 2, a total of 18 audits were finalised in the quarter as per Appendix 1. And Appendix 2 provides a summary of the scope of all of the reviews that were finalised. One moderate report was issued in the quarter, Members are already aware of that report being accounts receivable because that was at a draft stage when we did the annual report. But the actual report itself was finalised in Q1 of 2020. A total of 105 recommendations were made in the quarter, and all of them were accepted by client departments. And there was one high-risk recommendation as per 2.4, which relates to accounts receivable. The team also did some grant work on the housing support grant, as shown in 2.6. And then Appendix 3 gives members a view as to where we're at in terms of the plan as of the end of quarter 1. Just to give some background to how the staffing has been arranged over the last quarter, all of the staff were working remotely from the end of March up until today, and we can continue to do so. Luckily, as a section, we were one of the first departments to be given Agile kit, and we were already working from home periodically prior to COVID, so it was quite an easy transition really for the team. We have experienced some sort of issues in terms of being able to progress and initiate some of the audits, primarily because a lot of the workforce have been working from home. So we've done as much as we possibly can in the quarter remotely, which has included finishing off audits from the previous year and also completing some new audits on the 2020 plan. Some of the work has taken a bit longer because of the complexities of people being at home, not having access to documentation, etc. And some of the team have also been involved with COVID-related work, as shown in 2.11. We've had one member of staff fully seconded to the food bank scheme. We've also been supporting the business grant payments and checking those with the business rates department, just to give some assurances over those payments. Just to give you some additional background, we have allocated a lot of the audits to the team members to try and ensure they have, as much as possible, been able to complete the work remotely. So the idea is that then when things start to relax and the restrictions are eased slightly, we can then revisit some of them and do some of the final pieces of work that are outstanding on those. So if you look at Appendix 3, in paragraph 2.14, as at the end of June, 9 audits from 2021 had been finalised and 37 audits were in progress, which shows approximately 29% of the plan had been completed or was in progress at that time. Again, you will see in the appendices, a lot of them are ongoing or in process, primarily because we've allocated a lot of the jobs to give some flexibility to the team to work as best they can. 2.17, one moderate report was issued in the quarter, as I mentioned earlier, which was the accounts receivable audit. I won't go into any detail in 2.18 because we have Michelle Davis on the call to give some background to the accounts receivable issues. Members have had updates from Michelle Davis and Sean Williams previously on AR, and members are aware of the ongoing issues in that department. But I'll ask Michelle to highlight some of those and some of the things that have been put in place since the audit. As you can see in 2.18, 1 high risk and 2 medium risk recommendations were made. The high risk and the first medium risk recommendation were repeated from the previous review, just to make members aware. No moderate audits were followed up in the quarter, but we have planned to do the DBS and concessionary fares follow-ups in quarter 2. We've got 2 primary school follow-ups that are also due, but we have to postpone those to the new school term because the schools are closed. So if we move on to the appendices, Appendix 1 is just a list of the orders that were finalised, and as you can see, I've highlighted those that were finalised from the previous financial year. Appendix 2 gives a summary of the scope of the reviews that were completed, and then Appendix 3 is a snapshot of the plan as at the 30th of June 2020. So if members have got any queries, I'd happily answer any questions.
Thank you, Simon. Are there any questions from members, please? I got 3 hands up. Councillor Leslie Wharton.
This isn't a question, it's just an observation, and it's no criticism whatsoever. I'm very pleased that you did have a member of staff helping with the food bank initiative. At the same time, I'm very angry that this is necessary, and I think it's a very sad state of affairs that we have things called food banks in Wales and across the UK.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Councillor Walton. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yes, it's to do with the accounts receivable. I'm sorry, I haven't got the report in front of me. I did read it this morning. I think it's page 21. It's actually quoting some figures there about, I think it's £3 million,
Yeah.
Outstanding, and 3,700 overdue invoices. I understand probably some of these staff have actually been moved to the the duties, like Leslie Walton has said about the food bank and so on. Is that that can't be a normal amount of invoices? And I see Ben would actually perhaps reply to this. And is it a case that this amount will actually go up now as the COVID actually goes on? And if that's the problem in accounts receivable, is there a similar problem in accounts payable? I know it hasn't been audited, but perhaps Ben can comment.
Ben, do you want to comment on that?
I think it's fair to comment that undoubtedly COVID-19 has impacted on the section's ability to make inroads, and secondly, the ability for people to pay amounts due is also going to be impacted. So part of the recovery plan will be painting out quite painfully that arrears are likely to increase and there will be deterioration in terms of the backlog. That's no criticism of the staff in the section, no criticism of people placed in a position where they're unable to pay. It is unfortunately a horrible consequence of the seizing up of the economy. It's also the case that, of course, we've been unable to take any recovery action. It's the right thing to do anyway, in some respects, to give people some breathing space. But of course, the courts have also been closed effectively to any recovery action. In terms of accounts payable, less problematical because we're more in control of our own destiny in terms of ability to pay. It isn't dependent on someone else's ability to pay. And I'm hugely proud of the work the service centre has done in flexing all the resources it's been able to in terms of ensuring that monies are paid out to suppliers, and also the £50 million plus of business grants that have been paid out, and also the free school meals payments to parents that have gone out. So I think the resource for the service centre as a whole has been flexed, but is undoubtedly the case that accounts receivable, which were under some pressure anyway, are going to be doubly under pressure through no fault of their own as a result of COVID-19. It's just unfortunately the case.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay.
Chair, sorry, Chair, can I just come back to one point to just explain the testing here? The report obviously was finalised in Q1, but the actual testing and the figures you see there, the testing was done in February 2020, so that would be pre-COVID situation. So this isn't something that's happened since COVID. It's been a build-up over a number of years. And not just to give you some background in terms of the team, this has been sort of a resource issue for a while. And when we actually undertook the audit, some of the staff were seconded to the cloud project as well. So there's a few different issues, that I'm sure Michelle will elaborate on, but I just wanted to let you know this was as of February 2020.
Thank you for clarifying that, Simon. Councillor Mike Lewis. Councillor Mike Lewis.
Yes, hello, Simon. You mentioned earlier that it's been quite an easy transition to agile working for you and your staff. But you also said that you did most of the work, but some of the work you couldn't do because you had to come into the Guildhall. I find it a little worrying that you've got to come into the Guildhall because everything should be on the computer, and you should be able to do all the work from home rather than have to come in and look at paperwork. I mean, all your figures and everything. So could you sort of elaborate on what you mean? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Well, just to give some background to the team, we've obviously had the kit and been working from home the odd day periodically since for the last 2 years. What we have come across is where either departments are closed down or establishments are not open, like the Grand Theatre, for example, was on the plan. So the staff basically aren't there to allow us to progress with the full audit. There are some areas of testing, in particular audits, that we have to see key documents for inventory records, physical invoices that have come into department for payment, for example, mileage claims that are sometimes manual, they aren't all electronic. So while a lot of the authority is moving electronically, there is also some historical parts of the departments that are still paper-based. So in that respect, those are normally held within an office environment, so they aren't necessarily on a cloud system and not accessible. So some audits we've been able to do completely remotely, like a school's procurement test, which is all online. But there are other key documents that, from our point of view, we would have to see to physically verify that aren't necessarily on Oracle or on the cloud. Particularly with testing of some of the reviews, a lot of the stuff has been done remotely. That can be via payroll testing, etc. But there are still some areas that we have to physically get copies of documents either sent to us or scanned onto an email. And again, because those staff aren't in the office to do that, that sort of held us back a bit in terms of completion of some of the reviews.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a point really to Ben as well, if possible, Chair. Regards to the actual outstanding invoices, how many are actually that going to be payable to contractors, and perhaps how many are that are going to be payable to local authority? Perhaps the officer might be able to highlight the later on. But my concern really is that we need to try and pull this department back on books, really. I know but that's and because of the uncertainty at the moment due to COVID, and obviously this stall. But is there a possibility, perhaps Ben, perhaps when things get back to normal, we can perhaps look at actually bringing some support for this department to try and pull things back on track. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor White. Some of that was broken up. So, Ben, did you hear enough to be able to respond to that?
It was a little bit challenging, Chair, but I will try to read between the lines. I think Councillor White was making reference to both people's ability or lack or ability not to pay in terms of accounts receivable, and also some of the concerns about the viability on accounts payable and contractors. So I'll take it in that stead. The reality is we are being very flexible at the moment, also being flexible in terms of the advice that the Welsh Government has given us and the UK Government has given us around procurement notes, where there is a desire for all public bodies to go easy effectively on any supplier, maximising payments to them. There are always concerns in terms of the viability of third parties. We continue to be alert to that. But we have tried to follow the spirit of the guidance and legislation and guidance notes that have come out from both governments to forbear as much as we can on those that we are buying goods from where they've been disadvantaged. One of the obvious ones is the support we're given to bus operators directly as a result of clear instruction from Welsh Government. Accounts receivable is going to be much more nuanced. To pick up on what Simon said and what I was referring to previously, that was the position before COVID. It is undoubtedly going to get rather more challenging for all staff in terms of trying to recover sums, and there is a delicate balance to be struck between extracting all income due to the authority but recognising the difficult circumstances that people have been placed in. I should also have added that one of the issues that I've referred to repeatedly on a number of previous occasions is there were some large value items outstanding with the Health Board in particular, and I'm pleased to say that those have been settled, and they've been settled to a very substantial sum. And there's always logic in going after the £1 million items before the £1,000 items. They do, of course, all add up, but it has been one of the things that's been successfully concluded as a result of the efforts of the Director of Social Services and my staff, and a mutual agreement reached with the Health Board over a number of those long-standing cases, which has actually brought down the overall level of debt outstanding. And given the unprecedented circumstances we are in, I remain as relaxed as I can be in the circumstances over the levels of debt that are owed to us, and those concerns over the viability of both those supplying us with goods and those that are due to pay us. It's a fine balance, and one at the moment that I think we're adopting an appropriate judgment call between maximising resource for the council but also doing what's right for the wider Swansea and wider country. I hope that mostly answers Councillor White's question as best as I could interpret it.
Thank you, Ben. Is that sufficient for you, Councillor White?
Yes, okay, yes, thank you.
Yeah. I don't see any further hands up at the moment, so I've got two questions. One is in respect of section 2.16 with staff assisting in other roles within the local authority. Is that compromising your independence in any way, and how will you deal with that once things resume to normal?
In terms of the one member of staff that was seconded to the food bank, he's full-time seconded, and we've put controls in place to make sure that we are actually checking the work that he's doing in terms of we are physically auditing the spreadsheets, etc. So whatever he's working on, he's completely removed from auditing. In terms of the other stuff, in terms of checking the grant payments, we are sort of a retrospective check of the payment after it's actually been completed. So we are just verifying the information as a second check, basically, from department. So department are doing the initial check, and then we are doing a verification process as opposed to anything further. So again, we still remain independent, and we aren't involved in any way in making the payments, or in the operational side of the food bank itself. So they are two separate areas.
So you've safeguarded the independence matter under the standards then. Okay. The second one is regarding the accounts receivable moderate report. I think it's still a concern that, the picture that's been painted with the 3 million and the 3,700 invoices that Councillor Jeff Jones referred to. I'm still not getting a grip of where the root cause of this is, because you've got the legal team involved, you've got the AR staff involved, and you've also got officers within the service where certain functions within that process has been delegated. And, when we last had this audit reported to the committee, I asked where the cause was of the problem. Was it that these service areas weren't doing what they should have been doing in the time limits that they should have done them in, or was the sticking point at AR or the sticking point within the legals? I'm not asking you to answer that at the moment, because I think it'll take some pulling out of the detail, but I would like you to come back to the audit committee with that clarification when we meet in September.
Chair, could I possibly ask if Michelle is on the call? Is there any way that Michelle may be able to give some advice or some further detail on that, or would you rather wait until September?
If Michelle is able to answer, if not, I'm happy to wait till September. Michelle, are you there? Michelle Davis?
Sorry, I am speaking. My headset was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I've got some up-to-date stats which could give a little bit of context to the figures quoted in the report. So, as Ben has mentioned, we have made significant progress with the larger debts. So the current situation with the debt over 6 months old, that stands at volume 3,566. But the total value is the significant change, which stands at just over 1 million. So that is as a result of the focus of the teams, the central team, the AR team, and the service areas, particularly social services, where they focused on those customers and invoices of the high value debt. So the volume is still there, but the value has come down significantly. We've had a challenging time with regards to the resource. We had staff allocated to the Oracle project, and it took till February to get those fully backfilled. They were new, so they needed to be trained up, which we were making very good progress with that, ready to start really some proactive debt recovery activities in after the year end, and the pandemic then hit us, which put everything on hold as far as that was concerned. So in terms of moving forward, we've got an improved position with the overall value of debt outstanding and a small reduction in the number of invoices outstanding in that category, which is not on a hold reason or not on any instalment plan arranged. We have a recovery plan to get us back on track in place at the moment, where we are currently working through issuing any backlogged invoices and interfaces because they were on hold for a while since April. And by September, we expect to be back on board with the debt recovery activities with the additional resource, because those backfill posts are still with us, although we do have some staff working on project activities.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. That sounds a little bit more positive than the report is currently stating. Ben, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just also to echo exactly what Michelle has said, and you can see it in terms of the maths there, where we've gained several £1 million. And in social care, we had already 100% provided for it as bad debt, so it enabled there to be a windfall declared at the outturn report of Cabinet last week, and why social services was able to end up underspending, and that enabled money to be carried forward into the following year. I would also want to emphasise the wider element that whilst each of the functions in the service centre are separate, they do also act as a whole team, and it mustn't be forgotten that the service centre as a whole has flexed its entire resource to be able to make those free school meals payments to parents, to be able to, and we're talking £1/3 a fortnight, and has also shelled out £50 million in business grants. We didn't take on any extra people across all of those teams. So whilst you're right to focus on the figures in accounts receivable, I think it is also right to pay tribute to the service centre staff as a whole who flexed the overall resource and paid out many times that. And that's again getting that balance right between collecting what's due to us, but also keeping those businesses, those alive and people in employment, which gives us the best opportunity over the longer term to recover. So I think it's important that committee notes that wider context on top of what Michelle rightly has already said.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Ben. Are there any other questions before we move on? No? Next agenda item is agenda item 6, the internal audit recommendations follow-up report. Sorry, we've got to vote on item 5.
Information, it's
Okay then, sorry.
sorry.
I've just been told we have to vote on item
Sorry,
5. Are we happy to accept that report, please?
If I call out your name, and we'll have a simple for and against for accepting the report. Councillor Anderson.
For.
Councillor Black.
For.
Councillor Helliwell. Councillor Helliwell, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Is that a for, Councillor Helliwell? Okay, move on to Councillor Hennigan.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hood-Williams.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Jones. Peter Jones. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, 4.
Councillor Lewis.
For.
Councillor Pritchard.
For.
Councillor Walton.
For.
And Councillor White.
For.
Thank you.
Did we have Councillor David
Helliwell
reply? Councillor David Helliwell? Sounds as if there's a sound issue with Councillor Helliwell. Okay, perhaps we can confirm that outside of the meeting. If we can move on then to agenda item 6, which is the follow-up report. Simon?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This just gives committee a summary of the outcome of the follow-up of the recommendation tracker for internal audit for Q1. So if you look at Appendix 1, that shows all of the follow-ups that were completed in the quarter, which shows at the bottom of the page that of 205 recommendations that were followed up, 201 had been implemented and 4 had not been. So the 4 recommendations that haven't been implemented in the follow-up exercise are detailed in Appendix 2, which, as you can see, the majority of those are issues that are due to COVID-related circumstances, primarily inventory and other bits and pieces that have not been able to be completed due to the COVID-19 situation. None of them are high risk, as you can see in the table. They're all low risk recommendations, so not of significant concern. And we'll just pick those back up the next time we complete the reviews.
Thank you, Simon. Are there any questions, please? No questions on this report? This report is for information, for noting.
If we can vote on this one as well.
Can we vote on this
Yeah,
as well,
absolutely.
then, please?
There we go. If I run through simple for and against and again, it will start Councillor Cyril Anderson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Black.
For.
Councillor Hellywell. Still no response from Councillor
No.
Hellywell. Councillor Hennigan.
For.
Councillor Hood-Williams.
For.
Councillor James. Oh, this wasn't present. Councillor Peter Jones.
For.
Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, 4.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
For.
Councillor Sam Pritchard. Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Walton.
For.
Councillor White.
For.
And I believe Councillor Kirshner has joined us as well, and it was a 4 for item 5, Councillor Kirshner.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, you haven't picked me up, but I am here and voted for both reports.
Lovely. Thank you. And try to get response from Councillor Pritchard for this item. No.
Okay, thank you. If we can move on to agenda item 7, which is the COVID-19 recovery of risk management. Richard Rowlands.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the briefing, it's on page 43 of your papers, and that sets out a timetable for the recovery of risk monitoring and reporting following its suspension as a result of the lockdown in response to COVID-19. Prior to the lockdown, there were 2 main pieces of work in progress by officers with responsibility for risk. First part was the work to update and refine the risk information already been transferred to the new risk register. And secondly, as part of this, to improve the risk information included in the register, particularly the risk controls. The lockdown and the suspension took place that work. So this report outlines the plan that work to be restarted and finalised, as well as for all the risks to be reviewed and revised for the impact of COVID-19, which has significantly altered the risk landscape. The recovery plan in the report requires that all risks are reviewed and updated by responsible officers on the 31st of July, and this work is currently in progress. Final status will be reported to CMP in August, and then expect this in to commence in September with a monthly report on status of risk during August. That's a brief summary of. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Richard. Have we got any questions from members, please? I'm not seeing any hands up. If I could just mention that I met with the Chief Exec on the 7th of July, as the Audit Committee members are aware, to alert the Chief Exec to the concerns that the committee has around risk management, as well as other areas of workforce, etc. I was assured that the matter would be picked up, all the matters of concern would be picked up at the next CMT. So I'm assuming that will be the end of July, early August CMT. I emailed the Chief Exec this week to ask if he could give me an update for the meeting today. I've not had a response as yet, but I hope by September we'll have something more formal to give the committee more assurance, because risk management is fundamental to the role of the audit committee, and at the moment it's a gap that the committee has. So just wanted to advise the committee. I've got 2 hands that have popped up. Adam Hill first.
Thank you, Chair. I thought you'd been notified, but Phil had asked if I'd come today to give you an update so that it could be for all the committee. Certainly in terms of the moderate assurance audits that are reported, they will all now be going to each directorate's P&FM for further consideration to see what emergency action or urgent action needs to take place. From there, anything that is identified as needing work will be escalated up to CMT, and CMT will also have an overview now of all moderate assurance audits so that we can see where the trend analysis is, what's happening, and we can drill down further. So that's been programmed in now to all of CMTs, so that will now happen as a matter of course. The risk register is also being updated currently, and that will be completed, we understand, by the end of July. And again, that will be overseen through the normal risk process. But through CMT, we have at least a quarterly review anyway. But again, it will be going through P&FM, which is our performance and financial monitoring, which is within each of the directorates. Anything that's an adverse or a red risk will then be escalated through to CMT, so we have overall visibility of what is happening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's assuring it's being dealt with operationally, but obviously the Audit Committee are not cited of those key risks, so it's a shortfall in the information and the assurance for the committee at the moment. But I accept that progress is being made, and thank you for that. Councillor Peter Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if Adam's actually answered my question, but what I was concerned was that the risk register itself obviously is going to be adversely impacted by the whole lockdown and the recovery process which the council is putting in place. So I'm just wondering, how fundamental is that review of the risk register going to be as part of the recovery plan process, and will Audit Committee have a report on the impact of the pandemic on the risk register and whether additional risk will have been created as a result of it?
Thank you, Chair. Richard might need to come in on a bit more of the detail around that, but certainly in terms of the recovery plan, we do need to have a look at exactly what are the impacts, and that needs to pick up on as we move into that recovery phase. And there's kind of two stages of recovery, really. The first stage is recovering from the crisis that we were immediately in, but also that recovery of the economy and everything that goes along with that, which is a longer recovery process. So there's two elements. There certainly needs to be unpacked in terms of what were the risks prior to COVID that continue, and Richard's doing quite a detailed piece of work around the risks around COVID and what's that change moving forward. So it'll be two streams really, one of which is which risks continue regardless of COVID and which ones are created, and there may well be a new risk, and that's what we're working through now through the fundamental review, which will be done by the end of July. So we'll have a clearer picture moving forward. And the other thing, Chair, if I may, just in terms of the risk management programme that we have, obviously the reports that will be coming out of the new system once the complete review has been undertaken by the end of July will show a number of reports which will make it much more clear to both us as a leadership team and yourselves as audit in terms of where any risks have had no progress, where there are new risks added, whether any risks have been deactivated and the reasons for that, the risks that have been edited or updated, risk escalated or de-escalated, risk displaying a change to the RAG status within a period, and risk displaying red RAG status at the end of that period. So it will give much more clarity that we can then drill down into to find more of the reasons behind it as that reporting system comes online. But we need to do the work behind the scenes in bringing the risk register up to date, which, as I say, will be done by the 31st of July, for them reports to start flowing through.
Thank you, Adam. As I say, if we can keep a tight rein on those timescales that you've given, because it's been a gap, as I say, in the Audit Committee's understanding for some time, it was noted in the governance statement for the end of the year as well. So it'd be good to be positive at the end of this year to have something to say that we be back on track. Thank you for that paper. Are there any further comments before we take a vote on this?
So it's for information.
This one's for me. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
okay.
so
We're
all the
okay.
others are fine.
We're missing the vote on this one. Thank you very much. So we're okay to move on to agenda item 8, which is the tracker report, and I take agenda item 9 as well, which is the work plan. They are both for information. Are there any comments to be made on either of those reports? Otherwise, we accept them for noting. Any comments? I think the work programme for the audit committee will constantly be under review. We may have to rejig that as Simon's work progresses during the year. And I think the ongoing and outstanding actions in the tracker is outstanding for COVID reasons more than a delay in action by officers. So I'm happy to move those forward and we can update the position in September. Are there any other comments before we close those 2 papers? Oh, and actually close the meeting as well. No further comments? Terry, Councillor Terry Hennigan.
Yeah. Is Michelle Davis still there?
Michelle, are you still there?
Apologies, Chair. No, I did give Michelle permission to leave because I thought we'd passed her item. So I'd wanted her to go back and do some other work. So apologies, Councillor Hennigan. I'd already released her.
Okay.
You can ask a question of me if you wish.
Well, not you in particular, but I just wanted to thank her for the training she gave myself and others on the Microsoft Teams.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hennigan. Okay then. That's no further items on the agenda, so I'd like to close the audit committee. Thank everyone for their input today and please stay safe.